My fiancé's younger brother was known for being a man who claimed to value chastity, yet after his brother ran away from the wedding, he was forced to marry me instead. That night, Nathan Reed sat across from me, his expression cold and distant, and laid out 3 rules in an even voice. "I'm only fulfilling my brother's part of this marriage alliance," he said. 3 years later, we'll get divorced. I have a cleanliness issue, so we'll sleep separately. Don't call me husband, and I won't call you wife. Whatever happens between us is just for appearances. 3 years later, when I handed him the divorce papers, his eyes suddenly turned red. Tears welled up as he rushed toward the balcony, his voice trembling. "We've kissed, we've slept together, and now you say you won't take responsibility? Emma, I can't live like this anymore." On our wedding night, Nathan and I sat staring at each other in silence. I finally broke it. "Stop staring at me, untie the rope." Nathan was the first to give in. He lifted his hands toward me, speaking stiffly. I grabbed the knot binding his wrists and began untying it, keeping a cautious eye on him. "You're not planning to run, are you?" Today was supposed to be my wedding to his older brother, Ryan Reed. Our families were business partners. This marriage was nothing more than a transaction. No love, just profit and reputation. But Ryan, the hopeless romantic, decided he'd rather give up his inheritance than an affair of the heart. The night before the wedding, he literally climbed out the window, caught a flight, and ran away with his so-called true love. By the time I got the news, I was already at the ceremony in Boston. Backstage was in chaos. Everything was ready, guests had arrived, and the groom had vanished. The Reed family, to save face, came up with a story about Ryan being delayed and immediately pushed his younger brother, who had just flown back from abroad, onto the stage to take his place. I didn't refuse. It was only a business marriage anyway. A groom is a groom. One brother or the other, it didn't matter. Both brothers were tall, broad-shouldered, and handsome. When Nathan put on that tuxedo, he actually looked even better than his good-for-nothing brother. I accepted the situation without hesitation, but when the ceremony ended and we entered the bridal suite, Nathan finally realized what had really happened. His brother hadn't been late, he had truly run away. The moment he tried to take a step out of the room, I yanked off his tie and tied his hands together. Nathan, who'd been living overseas and clearly wasn't eating well, had no strength to fight me. My groom had fled on our wedding day, and as the daughter of a prestigious family, I couldn't afford to be humiliated. As my aunt liked to say, even if both their sons run off, they still owe you one husband for the wedding. If people found out my husband ran away, where would my dignity go? I tightened my grip on Nathan's wrist to remind him my 18 years of taekwondo training weren't for nothing. If he dared to run, I'd break a bone. Nathan shut his eyes and looked utterly defeated. "I won't run," he muttered. But the moment I untied him, his expression changed. He scooted backward, and when I moved closer, he jumped up, his ears turning red. My hand froze midair above his chest, confusion spreading across my face. "What's wrong?" "It's late, isn't it?" I tilted my head with a teasing smile. "Honey, aren't we supposed to consummate the marriage?" Nathan stiffened, then straightened up, his tone suddenly serious. "Emma, I'm Nathan Reed, not my brother." I blinked at him, puzzled. "I know that. I'm not blind. You look younger than he does." "Ryan or Nathan? What's the difference? A marriage alliance is a marriage alliance. As long as it benefits the family, that's enough." I let my eyes wander over him. 6'1", narrow waist, broad shoulders, sculpted chest, and a face too handsome for his own good. Besides, a gorgeous guy like you standing in front of me, if I don't sleep with you, wouldn't that be rude? The color drained from Nathan's face. He quickly buttoned up his shirt, picked up a blanket, and said flatly, "I'm only fulfilling my brother's marriage obligations. 3 years later, we'll get divorced." "I have a bit of a cleanliness issue," Nathan said seriously. "We'll sleep in separate rooms. Don't call me husband, and I won't call you wife. This is just for show." He meant every word, and for a moment I was completely stunned. Nathan's grip on the blanket tightened, and then he bent at the waist, almost a full 90-degree bow. "Emma, what my brother did was wrong," he said softly. "From now on, any reasonable request you have, I'll do my best to fulfill it for him." I had to admit, he was a lot more polite than his brother. At least he knew how to apologize properly. I reached out, grabbed the edge of his blanket, and with quick hands, pressed my palm against his firm chest. "Nathan," I said, blinking up at him, my tone sincere. "I have one request. I want to sleep with you." He froze completely. "I mean the kind of sleep where we both pass out." I added teasingly, "Didn't you say you'd try to meet all my requests?" Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a computer overheating, his pupils dilating as he stared at me in shock. "These are two different things," he stammered. "You're only married to me on behalf of my brother." I tilted my head, deliberately leaning in closer. "Then when we're in bed, you can call me sister-in-law. Think of it as fulfilling my request for him." Nathan looked like his brain had short-circuited. He just gaped at me, frozen. From this close, I realized he was even more handsome than Ryan, his features finer, his skin flawless, his nose straight, and his lips the soft pink of someone who lived a healthy, disciplined life. Our families had known each other for generations. The Reeds and the Moores were practically tied together by business and friendship, so our marriage had been planned since childhood. Ryan and Nathan were my childhood friends, though Nathan had gone overseas in high school and only came back for holidays. Ryan had stayed home to take over the family business, and over time, we naturally got closer. To be fair, Ryan was good-looking, well-mannered, and came from a perfect family. After years of being around him, I almost convinced myself that maybe our arranged marriage could turn into something real, but I hadn't expected him to run away the night before the wedding, leaving behind everything, including me, without a second thought. No responsibility, no sense of duty. I was angry for about 3 seconds. Yes, exactly 3 seconds. I'm an only child, raised like a princess. My parents spoiled me from birth. If I opened my mouth, they fed me. If I reached out, they filled my hands with gifts and money. A girl raised in love and luxury doesn't lack anything. So why would I waste tears on a man who was already rotten long before he ran away? The moment Nathan stood in front of me, my 3 seconds of sadness vanished completely. Losing a piece of silver only to find a bar of gold, that's what it felt like. I had to bite my lip just to stop myself from laughing in the middle of the wedding. I hooked my arm around Nathan's neck and pulled him closer. "It's a long night," I whispered playfully. "Let's start with a kiss." Just as I puckered my lips, he caught my face and turned it aside. His entire face went crimson, his lips trembling. "Emma, we can't do this," he said, panicked. Seeing his reaction only made me want to tease him more. "Oh, but I want to," I said, grinning. Nathan froze again, completely caught off guard, and I quickly rose on my toes to plant a kiss at the corner of his mouth. His lips were soft, warm, and faintly sweet. I was just about to kiss him again when his eyes suddenly went wide, then rolled back. With a loud thud, he collapsed straight to the floor. I blinked, dumbfounded. The next minute, I was rushing Nathan to St. Mary's Hospital, and the moment I dropped him off, I was already on the phone with his mother, Mrs. Reed. I hadn't been particularly angry about Ryan running away, but Nathan possibly fainting from a kiss? That set me off. How could my marriage turn into such a circus? I fumed into the phone. After hearing my exaggerated and very emotional retelling, Mrs. Reed hurried to explain. "Oh, Emma, don't worry. Nathan's perfectly healthy. It's just, we might have forgotten to mention something. He's not very comfortable with physical contact with women." I went silent for a moment, suspicion rising. "You mean he's impotent?" I asked carefully. Mrs. Reed gasped, flustered. No, not at all. My son's body is perfectly fine, I promise." "You grew up under my watch too, Emma," Mrs. Reed said over the phone. "There's no way Nathan would ever take advantage of you. He's always been like this. Never played with girls when he was little. If someone accidentally touched him, he'd scrub his hands raw when he got home. We even asked him once why he was like that, and he said he wanted to save himself entirely for his future wife." I blinked, silent. "I was planning to tell you tonight," Mrs. Reed went on hurriedly, "but then his second aunt called me to play mahjong, and I completely forgot. Look at the mess that caused." "Ah, so that's what this was." The legendary chaste playboy. Nathan Reed was a virgin, Mrs. Reed continued, her voice dropping to a more awkwardly cheerful tone. "Anyway, Emma, you're his wife now, right? My son's just shy, but he's in perfect condition, premium quality, trust me. You can touch him or play with him however you like." Before I could respond, the background erupted in the sound of mahjong tiles clattering, and then the line went dead. I stood there, phone still in hand, speechless. All that from a single kiss? I had just brushed his lips, and the man ended up in the hospital. What kind of nonsense was this? If I'd actually pushed him down, I'd probably be a widow by now. Just as the ambulance wheeled Nathan into the ER, he suddenly woke up. I was still processing everything Mrs. Reed had said. According to her, I was his wife now anyway, so technically, even if I'd pushed things further, it shouldn't have been that big a deal. Yet somehow, I was the one feeling guilty for kissing him. Looking at his pale face, my irritation spiked. Nathan blinked in confusion, glancing around the hospital room before his eyes landed on me. His lips parted slightly. "Emma, where are we?" The blank look on his face sparked something mischievous in me. "You don't remember?" I asked sweetly. "You and I got a little carried away while your brother wasn't home. You hit your head on the headboard and fainted." Gasps rippled around the room from the nurses nearby. Nathan's eyes widened, his face turning crimson as the realization hit. He opened his mouth, ready to explain, but before he could say anything, I leaned in and kissed him again. He went completely rigid. "I told you not to say things I don't like hearing," I murmured against his lips. When he passed out again, I sighed, slung him over my shoulder, politely thanked the doctor, and carried him out. Honestly, thin-skinned men were kind of fun to play with. The next morning at my office, while I was reviewing contracts, Nathan burst through the door holding his phone. His eyes were red, and he looked utterly devastated, still wearing the same clothes from last night when I'd carried him home. He was clearly panicking. I set down the contract, took a slow sip of coffee, and looked up at him lazily. "What now, husband?" Nathan's fair skin made every hint of blush painfully obvious. At my teasing tone, his eyes rolled back slightly as if he might faint again. Startled, I quickly set down my cup, hurried over, and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Oh, come on. Are you serious? You faint when I touch you, and you faint when I don't? Were you a god of sleep in your past life?" He blinked back to consciousness, remembering why he was there. Without a word, he shoved his phone toward me, his voice trembling. "Look at this. I told you I'm a virgin. How am I ever supposed to find a wife after this? You have to take responsibility." I frowned, glancing at the screen. The top news headlines read, "Heir of the Reed family and the Moore heiress engage in passionate wedding night battle. Young master hospitalized immediately afterward. Hospital confirms the patient as Nathan Reed, younger son of the Reed family." The accompanying photos were, less than flattering. "Ryan's love life has officially gone from fiction to reality," I muttered, scrolling through the shots. But when I saw the angle and lighting, I nearly threw the phone. Damn those paparazzi, they didn't even use a beauty filter. I immediately called my assistant. "Get those articles taken down, now. And tell every outlet that if they ever sneak photos of me again, they'd better use face smoothing and filters." Nathan just stood there, completely lost, as he watched me bark orders like it was a normal Tuesday. It took him a full minute before he finally managed, "Thank you." I sighed, realizing he probably misunderstood my intentions. He must have thought I took the news down to protect him. But hey, sometimes doing the right thing makes you look good too. "I'm not the kind of woman who forces anyone," I said calmly, folding my arms, "but I'm also not going to be overly polite about it." Nathan's face turned red. He shifted awkwardly from foot to foot and mumbled, "Yesterday, I think you might have kissed me." His voice grew quieter with each word. I dragged out a lazy, "Oh," pretending to think. "So you want me to take responsibility?" I tilted my head, smirking. "You were already standing in for your brother, weren't you? And since you're a chaste playboy, I can understand why you'd be so flustered." Nathan's face flushed a deeper shade of crimson, and he shook his head quickly. "You're my sister-in-law. A sister-in-law can't become a wife." "Then kiss me back," I said, puckering my lips. Nathan took a deep breath and stepped back 2 paces. "That's not what I meant." I tilted my head, watching him in amusement. After fidgeting for what felt like forever, he finally looked up at me, his tone solemn. "Emma, let's set new ground rules." I'd never met a man with such an intense sense of morality, and yet one who managed to act so ridiculously awkward at the same time. "I've never been kissed by a woman before," Nathan said stiffly, sitting upright on the couch across from me, like a proper little housewife, his face tight with discomfort. But this marriage isn't real. I'm just filling in for my brother. You don't have to take responsibility. When the 3-year agreement ends, we'll get divorced. Until then, you have to keep our relationship a secret. To everyone else, I'm Ryan. I stared at him, utterly confused. Hold on. When we attend public events together, how's that supposed to work? You look more handsome than your brother. People will notice right away. Even though the Reed family had quickly shut down all news of Ryan's runaway wedding, Nathan had lived abroad for years. Hardly anyone outside the family even knew what either brother looked like. But once we started showing up at events together, it was only a matter of time before someone figured it out. Nathan's face turned red again. You really think I'm more handsome than my brother? I nodded without hesitation. Yeah, definitely. His eyes widened slightly. You're the first person who's ever said that. You are more handsome? I said again with a shrug. He hesitated, then asked tentatively, Could you say it one more time? If it's inconvenient, that's okay. I couldn't help laughing. Wow, Nathan, you really do like compliments. His lips twitched into a smile he couldn't quite hide, the corners curling up until he looked like a shy, overgrown kid. You really are better looking than your brother, I said, leaning my chin on my hand as I studied him. His cheeks turned an even deeper shade of red. Then I suddenly blinked and said, Wait, that's not even the point. I snapped him out of his daze. What if we go to a business banquet and run into someone who actually knows you? How are we supposed to explain that? Nathan froze for a moment, clearly thinking hard. Then his eyes lit up, and he lifted his chin confidently. I'll just tell them my brother got into a car accident and had plastic surgery. That's how it works in novels, right? Besides, I've been overseas for so long, hardly anyone's seen me anyway. When he finished, he looked at me expectantly, eyes bright, clearly waiting to be praised. I chuckled. Wow, that's actually pretty smart. Then I tilted my head with mock seriousness. But what if you end up falling for me? You'd be chasing me while pretending to be your brother. Through the reflection in the glass window, I caught sight of my own face, a flawless beauty staring back. I looked back at Nathan, this so-called chaste playboy, wondering if he could really stay calm if I started to flirt in earnest. Nathan's expression hardened immediately, his tone firm. That's impossible. You're my sister-in-law. I'm a man who respects ethics. In the end, Nathan and I drew up a new agreement. I promised to keep our relationship secret, and he agreed that everything within our private life would be left up to me. He'd keep calling me sister-in-law, and I'd keep calling him husband. Somehow, the arrangement felt bizarrely balanced, awkward but harmonious. Nathan continued sleeping in the guest room, and I didn't object. He still felt guilty about his brother's runaway wedding, so he insisted on letting me boss him around as a form of compensation. I didn't refuse. Nathan wasn't exactly the business type anyway. Otherwise, Ryan wouldn't have been chosen as the company's successor. So I went ahead and took over the management myself. We were one family now, after all. Nathan seemed relieved by it. He stayed home, completely at peace, and devoted himself to studying gourmet cooking. According to him, because Nathan had eaten so poorly back when he was abroad, now he just wanted to train himself rigorously in the kitchen, and that turned out to be to my advantage. After another hearty meal, I rubbed my rounded belly, collapsed satisfyingly onto the couch, and looked up to meet Nathan's eager gaze. I sincerely praised him. Tonight your braised prawns were perfect. The soy braised pork with potatoes had just the right flavor, and the lotus root stew was rich. The lotus root was cooked to a lovely, soft, floury texture. Nathan gave a satisfied little sound, then jumped up from the table like a donkey on steroids, ran into the kitchen, and started washing the dishes. I'd had enough rest, so I went to take a shower. When I came out, Nathan had finished the dishes and was mopping the floor. Maybe from the work he'd been doing, he'd warmed up. He took off his crisp shirt and wore only an old tank top. The lines of his muscles moved smoothly and powerfully with each motion, veins showing as he exerted himself, and a heavy, pressing sort of testosterone seemed to explode into the air. Suddenly I felt warm. My stomach, I mean. I'm a normal woman. Living under the same roof with a broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted hunk gives rise to natural physical feelings, doesn't it? Nathan cooked well. I wondered whether other things he did would be as pleasing. My throat went a little dry, so I swallowed and tugged down my nightgown unconsciously, then sat directly in the chair opposite him. Nathan was mopping right in front of me, and when I looked up at him, he froze in place, his ears reddening and his eyes unable to find a place to rest. His fingertips tightened on the mop handle until they went white, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he said in a hushed voice, "I'm going to say something a bit impolite." "Dirty talk?" I snapped upright, my mouth suddenly dry and my anticipation visible. Nathan slowly loosened his grip on the mop and pointed to my waist. "You seem to have put on some weight," he said. With Nathan's daily inventive ways of trying to be delicate, I had indeed gained weight. Stepped on the scale and saw 20 gin show up in just 3 short months. I fell into a brief reverie. "I told you my eyes are to blame. I've eaten 20 gin more," I said. "You say my cooking is so good. If I raised pigs, would I be equally good at that?" The culprit stood behind me, looking at the scale's numbers with his head thrown back, smug and fired up. This time it wasn't my stomach that reacted. I spun my head and glared at his mouth that wouldn't stop yammering. "A chaste playboy, huh? Thin-skinned, right? A virgin, right? 3 rules, right? Let me teach you the seriousness of casually talking about a woman's weight." Nathan stood there, dazed and a little intoxicated. I stepped close, hooked my arm around his neck, went up on my toes, and pressed my lips firmly over his, finally quieting him. Nathan went totally blank. When he snapped back, his eyes rolled and his face twitched. Luckily, I was fast. I pinched the spot between his nose and upper lip and added 2 slaps for good measure. "Say I'm fat again and I'll kiss you to death," I warned viciously. Nathan's eyes instantly filled with tears. His anger made the muscles in his chest tremble up and down as he brushed against my arm around his neck. The effect was strangely pleasing. Handsome boys getting riled up were extra pleasant to look at. Maybe it had been too long since I'd been close to a man. The slight tear glistening at the corner of Nathan's eye even stirred a reaction in me, and I couldn't help but clamp my thighs together. Before he could open his mouth to protest, I suddenly went quiet and said, "I regret it. I want to set new ground rules." I held Nathan down and stated my demand. "You said it yourself, you're standing in for your brother. After 3 years, per the agreement, we will divorce. But during these 3 years, whether you're Ryan Reed in public or Nathan Reed pretending to be him in private, you're still my husband, aren't you?" Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "Since we're in a marriage," I continued smoothly, "it's only fair that we fulfill our marital duties. Nothing wrong with that, right?" Nathan, who had just managed to calm down, turned red again. He stammered, "But we agreed that if you have any requests, I'll do my best to meet them." "But this..." "We can start small," I said, leaning closer. "A kiss, maybe? Look, you don't faint right away anymore when I kiss you. That means you're getting used to it." I spoke patiently, like I was coaxing a child, then pressed another quick kiss to his lips. Nathan's eyes widened in surprise, but this time he didn't roll them back or pass out. Seeing that, I couldn't help but praise him. "See, you're already getting the hang of it. Even your kissing skills are improving as fast as your cooking." The moment I mentioned his cooking, Nathan's expression changed. He jutted his lips forward proudly, leaning closer to me. "Of course, I'm a fast learner. Go ahead, kiss me again. I definitely won't faint this time." Whoever invented Nathan Reed must have been a genius. He was so innocent it bordered on idiocy. Looking at him sitting there with his eyes squeezed shut, face tilted up like an oversized puppy, I suddenly remembered the miniature version of him from years ago. He was 3 years younger than Ryan. Back when Ryan and I were wild, mischievous teenagers always sneaking around causing trouble, Nathan would follow behind us, clutching a sweet biscuit in his chubby little hand and sipping water from a round canteen that hung from his neck. Wherever we went, he followed. Quiet, obedient, never causing a fuss. He'd always been that way. When we were little, he listened to everything his brother and I said. In middle school, he helped us write homework. Even during the rebellious years of high school, he stayed focused on studying and never dated anyone. Sometimes, he even covered for me and Ryan when we got into trouble. After graduation, he went abroad and only came home for holidays. By the time he finished college, I was already engaged to Ryan. At every family dinner, Nathan would sit properly and greet me respectfully as sister-in-law. He never had a rebellious phase. He wasn't particularly clever either, but there was something inexplicably adorable about him. And his lips, they were really nice to kiss. Soft, full, and smooth, like my favorite orange jelly candy. Just as I was getting into it, Nathan suddenly grabbed my wrist. His lips were swollen, and he was breathing heavily as he turned his face away, clearly embarrassed. "Emma, learning how to kiss doesn't require touching my underwear, does it?" I followed his gaze down. My hand had somehow wandered south without my realizing it. "Sorry," I said unapologetically, "just exploring for educational purposes." After that, under the noble excuse of practice, I kissed Nathan for half an hour every night before bed. He wasn't stupid, just slow to process things. There were times we kissed until our lips were slick with saliva, and then, all of a sudden, he'd open his eyes wide and ask seriously, "If this marriage is fake, why do we still need to kiss?" Trying not to laugh or scream, I closed my eyes and changed the subject. "The spicy crab you made tonight was even better than last time. Your cooking's improving fast." Like flipping a switch, Nathan's intelligence reset to 0. His eyes lit up immediately, and he said with excitement, "Last time I probably simmered the sauce too long, but this time I got the timing just right. Let me tell you how I did it. First, you wash the crab clean, coat it in starch, heat the oil, then add ginger, scallions, and garlic. When the oil's hot, toss in the ginger slices, dried chili, and the crab pieces. Fry them until golden brown." I nodded absently, pretending to listen while my hand traced the lines of his abs. During moments of culinary passion like this, as long as I didn't actually touch the edge of his underwear, he usually didn't notice. The downside was, whenever Nathan's delayed reaction finally kicked in, I had to immediately praise his cooking again to distract him. After a month of this nightly training, my lips felt completely refreshed. My hands were delighted by his pecs, my fingers loved his abs, and somehow a whole new cookbook seemed to appear in my head. But that wasn't all. I lowered my eyes in disbelief at the scale and saw another 10 gin had been added. I fell into thought again. Every time I was halfway through making out with Nathan, he'd start reciting that ridiculous recipe of his. When we got tired of kissing and finished listening, we were hungry, and it was just the right time for a late-night snack. 11, 12 o'clock. The perfect hour for barbecue. Nathan, who'd never done it before, suddenly got excited and spent days researching and tweaking the flavors, and each time he'd pair the food with a couple of small drinks. No wonder our relationship had been so harmonious this past month. Who wouldn't be happy eating and drinking with someone every day? The door suddenly flew open, and Nathan barreled in, scooped me up, and kissed me twice. His eyes shone. "Emma, tonight I'll tell you how I made those garlic prawns. Oh, and the barbecue, I bought a huge squid. I'll make you teppan grilled squid in a bit." Looking at his chiseled jawline and his clean, defined muscle lines, heat rose up inside me. I patted his hand. "Put me down." Then I pointed to the scale on the floor. "Get on." Nathan looked puzzled but did as I asked, and instead of gaining, he'd lost 3 gin. He scratched his head. "Huh? How did I lose weight? Am I eating less? That can't be. I eat 2 big bowls every meal. Where was I? Oh, right, the garlic prawns." I covered his mouth expressionlessly and pushed him out the door. "Not tonight. I don't want more kisses. I don't want to hear your recipe, and I don't want barbecue. Go quietly back to your room." After a month of trying to lose the extra weight, I'd finally shed half of it, but I was still starving, so I traipsed over to Nathan's door and knocked weakly, pouting. Come on, give me 2 kisses, recite your recipe, and grill 2 skewers of squid." I leaned in toward his lips, hand sliding down, only the texture felt different, slicker. I opened my eyes. Nathan was standing there, bare-chested, watching me coolly. I was instantly excited. When Nathan and I first moved in together, he always came out in a buttoned shirt and long pants right after his shower. Sometimes I'd catch him in a tank top and boxers, but never like this. Bare from the waist up, just a towel around his hips. I swallowed. My impatience spiked. "Aren't you gonna kiss me? Or recite your recipe?" Nathan reached out and covered my mouth. The scent of mint body wash flooded my nose. "Is this the first day I've worn like this?" he asked calmly, which left me bewildered. I'd been so busy with dieting this past month I hadn't noticed how Nathan, who worked and tried to stay slim, had suddenly become more open. Could a grown man really have no physiological needs? My hand moved toward his towel, but my shoulder was grabbed and I was turned 180 degrees and pushed out. Nathan's cool voice came from above. I don't want to kiss, I don't want to recite recipes, and I don't want to grill squid. Go quietly back to your room. With a bang, the door shut. No kisses, no recipe, and now a new pimple had popped up on my forehead. My hormones were out of whack again and my head ached. Recently, there was something even more annoying. My best friend had fallen in love and turned into a lovesick mess. She'd abandoned her younger brother, who'd just started middle school, and chased that man like a lunatic, once almost starving her own brother at home. With a single wave of her hand, my best friend sent her little brother straight to my doorstep. Feed my brother for me, she said breezily over the phone. Just make sure he stays alive. Life is a wilderness, girl. I'm going to chase love with all my heart. You'll support me, right? On her end, I could hear the wind howling, faintly mixed with a man's voice. I pressed my fingers to my temple, exhaling. Yeah, life's a wilderness. Sure, you said the exact same thing about your last boyfriend. My parents aren't home, she continued. Please take care of my little brother for a while, okay? What did you say? I asked, already feeling a headache coming on. The signal's bad. I'll bring you a gift when I'm back. Then came the familiar beep. Call ended. Every time I tried to say something, she'd already hung up. When I lifted my head, a boy was standing right in front of me. I froze. He had a backpack on his shoulders, standing timidly in the corner by the wall. His short black hair was thick and neatly trimmed, his features striking, and his eyes clear and bright. I blinked, processing. Evan? The boy lifted his head and gave me a shy smile. Hi, Emma. It's been a long time. The last time I saw Evan, he was a chubby kid with a spiky buzz cut who'd enthusiastically invited me to blow up the sewage tank next door. In the blink of an eye, that little troublemaker had turned into a fine-featured, almost delicate-looking teenager. It wasn't until he raised his wrist and I saw the childish smartwatch there that it hit me. He was only 13. There's a saying, a growing boy eats his parents out of house and home. It's the truth. Whenever Nathan sent food over for me, he always prepared an extra portion. But for a boy in the middle of puberty, even 2 servings weren't enough. Evan held up his hands to show me a bowl size bigger than his own head and said earnestly, At home, I usually eat from a bowl this big, Emma. Seeing my expression stiffen, he immediately ducked his head, a cowlick springing up at the crown. In a small, guilty voice, he said, Did I eat too much? I'm sorry, Emma. Maybe I should go home. I can have instant noodles. It's fine. I like those. The more I listened, the angrier I got. I had no idea how my best friend, who was so lost in her latest romance, ended up with such a polite, well-behaved brother. It wasn't even a big deal to add 1 extra serving. After watching Evan happily devour meal after meal for several days, I couldn't help softening. Even though Nathan had been acting strangely cold toward me lately, he still cooked every day. And not just that. His breakfasts had evolved from simple sandwiches to a rotation of dumplings, noodles with fried bean sauce, savory crepes, and chicken wraps. Each meal looked more exquisite than the last. Lunches and dinners were the usual balanced spreads, complete with neatly arranged fruit platters. I thought for a moment, then texted Nathan directly. Hey, can you start adding 1 more portion to every meal? He replied almost instantly. Okay. When the food arrived that afternoon, I opened the door, and there he was. Nathan stood before me, not the driver. His hair was perfectly styled, his outfit sharp and coordinated, and his face as dark as thunder. We stared at each other for a long second. Why are you delivering food today? I asked. He lifted the insulated lunchbox, glanced at me, then at Evan waiting obediently nearby. His gaze came back to me, filled with quiet resentment. You told me to make an extra portion, he said flatly. Was it for him? Before I could answer, he pointed accusingly at the bento box from breakfast. His voice rose. The breakfast I made for you? You shared it with him? Then he gestured at the lunch container in his hands, his tone going even higher. And the lunch I made for you, you gave him that too? I opened my mouth, but he wasn't done. The dinner, Stop right there, I interrupted quickly. I ate dinner at home with you, remember? Don't twist things around. So what you're saying, Nathan said, his eyes narrowing, is that if I deliver dinner again, you'll just share that with him too. My jaw dropped. I mean, he continued, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous tone. You used to kiss me every night before bed. But lately, you haven't kissed me at all. We're not even divorced yet, and you're already doing this outside? I'm going to take this straight to my in-laws. Nathan snapped, voice shaking. Emma, you're nothing but an irresponsible bitch. The room froze in a standoff. I opened my mouth to explain, but Nathan's words kept firing out like a machine gun. I gripped my chopsticks, caught between eating and not eating. Evan kept stuffing his face, completely unfazed. Nathan drew a deep breath, glared at Evan, and roared, You little green tea. I'm talking to you. Don't pretend you can't hear me. Only then did Evan, who had been happily finishing his bowl, realize the man in front of him was hostile. He gave an embarrassed little smile. Big brother, did you cook this? He asked sheepishly. It's really tasty. I love it. The casual comment sounded like a provocation to Nathan, whose eyes rolled as if about to faint with indignation. Finally, his onslaught of words stuttered to a halt. I took one quick step forward, pinched the spot between his nose and upper lip, and slapped him across the face. Once, twice, reminding him he was dealing with a middle schooler, not some rival. What are you doing? I snapped. Nathan's eyes rolled back. Then he froze when he saw Evan pull a stack of summer homework out of his backpack next to the kid's little smartwatch. For a long moment he turned into a deflated firecracker, then started to laugh at himself awkwardly. Kids these days at 13 are already so big? Ha ha! What a scene! I must be sleepwalking. It's not me. My family's still making soup. I'll go. With that, he slipped away. I stared at Evan's summer workbook, then at the extra, beautifully prepared meals Nathan had been bringing me, and sank back into thought. So Nathan's cold shoulder lately, his silent treatment, wasn't because I refused to listen to his recipe recitations. It was because I hadn't been kissing him on schedule every day. That night, I came home early. No one was in the living room, but there were noises in the kitchen. I set aside the new cookbook and tiptoed toward the sound. Hey bro, can I ask you something? Nathan's voice came through, accompanied by the clatter of pots and pans. It's like this. There's this friend of mine. I told you he's just a friend. His tone fluttered with agitation before settling. He always cooks for his, nominal wife. Before he cooks at night, they kiss, foreplay and stuff, not the actual cooking. Show me on video. This is the dish I made. Nathan stood with his back to me, wearing a pink Hello Kitty apron and holding the spatula high like proof of innocence. See? I cooked this dish. He looked utterly exposed. Okay, I'll admit it, I was caught off guard. Fine, I admit it, I'm that friend. I like cooking for him, and I like kissing him. I can't stand the idea of him giving my food to other people. Is that me being too controlling? Nathan's voice dropped low, then suddenly rose again, indignant. Liking him, how could I? He's my sister-in-law. Since I came back, if I play around, don't talk nonsense. My lips have only been kissed by my sister-in-law. My abs and chest have only been touched by my sister-in-law. I take care of myself. I lingered outside the kitchen, quietly retreating to the living room, my eyes blank as I stared at the cookbook on the table. After a moment, Nathan came out carrying a plate. He froze when he saw me sitting on the couch. Why are you back so early today, Emma? He asked. I looked up at him. He'd been wearing a shirt under that pink apron earlier, but now it was gone. He stood in the apron alone, no shirt underneath. I stared at the cotton and swallowed, suddenly ravenous. Nathan was practically wielding the spatula like a baton, and I reached out to undo the apron string, but my hand stalled in midair. Nathan bared his teeth and called out in a booming voice, There's one more soup, and dinner's about to be served. By the time the last dish was on the table, Nathan's fierce expression had softened. He twisted his hips back and forth on the chair, and my hand holding the new cookbook started to sweat a little, so I just handed him the cookbook I'd bought for him. From now on, tell me the recipes you make every night, okay? And while you're at it, give me a kiss. Maybe more than one kiss. Nathan glanced at my lips, quickly looked away, his ears flushing, and then he gave a small, hesitant nod. In a low voice he said, I feel like something's not right. His phone buzzed suddenly. It was Mrs. Reed calling. I buried my head in my food and didn't really catch what they were saying. When I looked up, Nathan's face had gone white. The next second he was on his feet so fast the chair scraped the floor with a harsh noise. "What? You're saying my brother's coming back?" I sprayed rice out of my mouth at that. Nathan ate like a man possessed for the rest of the meal. Halfway through he shoved his bowl at me and muttered, "Finish eating, toss the bowl in the toilet and flush it," then stumbled off toward his bedroom, leaving the image of a toilet in my head and killing my appetite in an instant. I crept up to his bedroom door to eavesdrop. His voice was loud enough, I didn't need to press my ear to the wood. "Quick, quick, get someone to contact the media. Say my brother died," he was saying into the phone. "Wait, no, that's wrong. Say I'm the one who died. Tell them the family exists with or without me. If he wants to leave, he can leave. If he wants to come back, he can come back. Is this his house? I'm an only son, I don't care. Sister-in-law equals wife. Wife equals sister-in-law. Sister-in-law is destined to become wife." It sounded like he was ranting himself dizzy. After that day, Nathan's emotional intelligence about playing the dutiful son went through the roof. At meals, he'd deliberately put his water glass on my side, and whenever I accidentally drank from it, he'd immediately wag his finger and say, "You drank my water, you have to take responsibility." He still kept reciting recipes before kissing me as usual, kissing until our lips were sticky with saliva, and with a dazed look he'd always add, "You have to take responsibility." Once, while catching his breath, I pushed him away and said, "You can kiss whoever you want. You don't need me to be responsible." Before I could finish the sentence, his mouth was forcefully pressed over mine again. He babbled something incoherent. "Kiss, kiss, kiss." And as his hand slid down to sneakily feel my abs, he didn't stop. If anything, he pressed me down more gently and helpfully murmured, "You can touch my underwear too, but you have to take responsibility." What I planned to tell him choked in my throat. Actually, after Mrs. Reed called Nathan, she'd also called me. Ryan's return wasn't about reconciling with me. Even if he wanted to, I wouldn't accept him. I sneaked a glance at Nathan, who tugged his towel lower as if to make it easier for me to touch, and thought, a man who's prepared to be an only son would never willingly give that up. Ryan had fled so hastily that he hadn't properly explained anything to anyone. Now, suddenly remembering his parents and me, left at the altar, he wanted to come back and apologize. It would be a light apology that would mostly move himself. Who else would it move? Apologies don't buy forgiveness, but money might. I hadn't expected Ryan to transfer his shares to me. I certainly hadn't expected an heir to give up the family and run off with a longtime crush. But what did any of that have to do with me? Nathan heard his brother was coming back and caught only that fact. He didn't hear why Ryan was returning. "Honey, it looks like you've touched my..." Nathan looked up, cheeks flaming, and paused deliberately. I looked down at the gray triangle of his underwear. As the saying goes, big in one place, small in another. Nathan had been trying to seduce me coyly and clumsily recently, and I'd seen it all. After thinking it over, I decided I had to tell him the truth about reclaiming what was his. The moment Nathan's brother's name left my lips, his palm burned hot against mine. I gasped softly and looked down at where my hand was. Nathan had caught it, rubbing and kneading insistently. "Baby," he said breathlessly, voice urgent, "don't stop talking. Touch me here too, not just touch, you can use it." That night, I used every bit of him. By the time I woke up the next morning, my stomach muscles ached as if I'd run a marathon. Once Nathan had unlocked the door, he learned everything at lightning speed. I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror, the large, distinct handprints smeared across the glass, along with a few other traces of our chaos, and my cheeks burned. Even now I could still hear the echo of his voice in my ear, alternating between "baby" and "Emma." I didn't dare look too closely around the room. I just threw on my clothes and got up. When I reached the door, breakfast was already waiting on the table. Nathan turned his head toward me, revealing a faint mark on his neck, a perfect hickey. His expression was deadly serious. "You have to take responsibility for this," he said. Then, lowering his voice, "And for the other thing, too. We did it too many times yesterday, and now it's a little swollen. You have to take responsibility for that as well." As he spoke, he started to stand and tugged at his waistband. I'll take responsibility," I blurted before he could continue. Nathan straightened and said firmly, I want a real title. Not as Ryan's stand-in, not as the substitute who fell for his sister-in-law, but as myself. Nathan Reed, who loves Emma Lynn. So we held another wedding. Everyone in our social circle already knew Nathan had originally been a stand-in groom. Outsiders who didn't understand the situation only caught snippets of gossip. The Reed brothers, marriage swap, sister-in-law turned wife. Within days, the internet was flooded with scandalous headlines. The heiress who seduced two brothers, one after another. They called me the socialite seductress, claiming I'd devoured both Reed brothers one by one. When I saw that article, I kicked the man who was currently working hard between my legs so hard my thigh almost cramped. "Look what you've done," I hissed. "You pretended to be your brother, and I'm the one getting labeled the homewrecker." Nathan just laughed so hard his chest shook, apologizing between chuckles. "I'm sorry, baby, I really am." I opened my mouth to curse him some more, but whatever words I had left were lost under his kisses and thrusts that broke my sentences apart. 3 years later, Nathan and I decided to move into a bigger house. While packing, I stumbled across a crumpled folder buried in a drawer. When I opened it, 4 bold black words stared back at me. Divorce agreement. It must have been the one I'd asked my assistant to draft back when Nathan and I first made our 3-year pact. I couldn't even remember when it had been delivered. A wicked idea stirred inside me. Maybe I should tease him a little. Nathan was crouched by the kitchen, carefully wrapping up the pans. He looked up when I called, tilting his head like a curious puppy. "What's up, baby?" I waved the document in my hand. "It's been 3 years, Nathan." He squinted, then, as soon as he made out the words on the paper, the color drained from his face. "A divorce agreement?" His voice cracked. "But don't we love each other for real?" I put on a thoughtful expression. "Don't we? Or was it always just an arrangement?" The stainless steel bowl slipped from his hands and clattered loudly to the floor. His eyes reddened instantly, and he lunged toward me in a panic. "Emmeline, you're awful," he shouted, voice shaking. "We've kissed, we've touched, we've done everything, and now you say you won't take responsibility? Were all these years of me cooking for you just for nothing?" His eyes brimmed with tears, his chest heaving. "Sweet or spicy, steamed or braised, I gave you everything. I can't live like this." Then he spun around in a dramatic whirl, stepped on a fallen rolling pin, and, unfortunately for him, his momentum carried him straight toward the balcony. Good news. We lived on the 2nd floor. Bad news. He really went over the edge. The move was put on hold while I rushed him to the hospital. Nathan howled all the way there, clutching his leg. I just wanted my wife to love me more. Heaven didn't hear that. But when I said I didn't want to live, that it heard loud and clear. Thankfully, his injuries weren't serious, just a minor leg fracture that would need a few weeks of rest. As soon as he sat down at home, his face leaned right into mine, eyes blinking like hazard lights. I stared at him until I started to feel dizzy from how fast he was fluttering his lashes. "Close your eyes," I said. Nathan let out a little whimper and turned his head away, his voice barely louder than a mosquito's buzz. "No divorce? Not leaving my wife," I sighed. "I never planned to divorce you," I said, exasperated. "I just found that old agreement and wanted to tease you a little. How was I supposed to know you'd overreact like that?" He sniffled pitifully, clearly on the verge of tears. "I was going to throw myself into your arms and cry," he muttered. "But then I stepped on the rolling pin and couldn't stop myself." Now he was sitting there, one leg propped up awkwardly in a cast, looking as dejected as a kicked puppy. When he caught me staring, he started blinking again, big eyes shimmering with guilt and something else entirely. I crossed my arms. "If you keep acting like that, I'm not talking to you." At that, Nathan finally seemed satisfied, but he didn't stay quiet for long. After a few minutes, he sat up again, glancing around shyly. The tips of his ears flushed pink as he leaned closer, his voice brushing against my ear. "Baby, tonight, can you be on top? My leg's broken." No one had ever warned me that once a chaste playboy woke up, he'd turn into such a shameless man. This was the same Nathan who used to faint from a single kiss, and now his brain was filled with nothing but dirty thoughts. When our eyes met, his gaze was full of hopeful anticipation. I couldn't help but nod. "Fine," I said. "Tonight, you'll play the crippled patient, and I'll play the cold, untouchable nurse." I never got the chance to tell him that whether or not he'd awakened, I liked him all the same. Bookmark.